6:22 in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm just reminded that having described the last Star Wars movie as the worst, that doesn't make it the most overrated, because it could have been by universal acclaim that it was the worst. So it wouldn't have been overrated. Overrated means that it got a lot of reviews, maybe a lot of people went to see it and whatever, but if you really check it out critically, it's rubbish. So I have to thank Dougie the cameraman for that, because you could understand, more and more you understand the scheming, conniving mind of Dougie the cameraman, and that's why he's the man responsible for all the thieving at Clico, because he finds ways to look at things very differently. So because nobody else is responsible for the thieving of the billions at Clico, we hold him responsible for that in that sense. But let's talk about reopening for business, reopening the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. We see that discussion going on all over the place. In the United States, some states are being prodded and probed by their president to go out there and demonstrate. There's some people, I think in Michigan, they stormed the place of the state capital and so on, to get a sense as to show their protest that they need to get the place opened up despite the concerns of COVID-19. But let's talk about from a local setting, because the fluidity of COVID-19 makes it impossible to map out the perfect comeback plan for many businesses. High rental fees, loan payments, and the prospect of staff cuts are just some of the burdens facing employers at this time. Gabriel Faria, CEO of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, says companies are offering solutions to the best of their ability when it comes to employees, but businesses are yet to receive the promised assistance from government. Concerns continue to grow for the micro, small and medium enterprises in particular. But could there be hope on the horizon with the submission of a phased reopening plan? Well, we're joined by a couple of members of the Confederation of Regional Business Chambers. Reval Chattergoon is president of the ARIMA Business Association, and Rampasad Suraj is the president of the Penal Debi Chamber of Commerce. We already have Mr. Chattergoon on screen, and we're going to talk with him first of all. Very good morning to you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Fazeer. Thank you for having us, and good morning to your viewers.
Should we be opening up? Should businesses be allowed to open up to do business as normal again?
Well, that is a very loaded question, and let us start off with the curve. So far, based on the statistics that are shown, with just 116 fairly flatlining at 1,700 tests, but at 1,700 tests, only have, I think, about 14 or 1,500 individuals being tested. Now, when we look at a population of 1.4 million, and you're looking at that 1,500 tests being done, that is 0.01 or 0.1%. So even as a statistic person, that odds are kind of impossible to make that decision. The other side of it is that if we open too soon, and I want to choose my words carefully, if we open too soon, what will happen is that from March 27 till May 15 will be all lost. So we have to be careful. The only way in my mind that decision could be made is that we have a certain percentage of the population tested properly, and then that would actually give us some confidence that we could open. Now, the rush to open for any business community is really the harsh financial situation we find ourselves, and not only ourselves but our employees as well, because where we sit as SMEs and chamber president, one must understand, based on all the economics person, they actually quoted that we actually employ 60% of Trinidad's population. So we all are suffering at this point in time. I say that the government so far is doing a fantastic job based on the feedback that we're getting, the position, the numbers and all of that. So in terms of opening, I think it's too soon, but you could understand our anticipation, because all business community still have overheads running, even though they're absolutely closed. And I would like to talk about that a little bit more later on into our conversation, if you permit.
Absolutely. In fact, we could go into that. As soon as Mr. Suraj is available, we'll link up with him as well. I think we have him available via Zoom. Mr. Suraj, are you there with us?
Yes, I am.
All right. Before we return to Mr. Chattergoon for him to develop the point that he would like to, just tell us what is your perspective on this, because we're hearing competing narratives. We're hearing, for example, from Mr. Fazeer of the National Chamber talking about eyeing a phased reopening possibly from May the 4th, talking about how disastrous it will be for business to stay closed for even longer into the month of May. You are representing the Penal Dembe Chamber of Commerce. What is your perspective?
Well, first of all, good morning, and thank you for having me on your program this morning. Sure. Let me say that basically I share the sentiments that would have been expressed by Reval, but I want to add some context into what has been said. And that is basically with regards to the numbers. We would have indicated, based on yesterday's numbers, roughly 116 people. This morning I was made to understand it's 117. 117 people have been tested. In fact, 117 people have been declared positive out of a population tested of 1672. That basically is a figure of probably about 6.9% of the population. By a process of extrapolation, 6.9% of the population of 1.3 million people would probably give us, if we were to do testing on the basis of what is happening right now, we'll probably have about 90,000 people tested. I begs to ask the question, and Reval would have indicated as well, with 1672 people tested yesterday, which is basically 0.0123, 1.2% of the population, can we justifiably say that we have tested enough people in order to have a reopening? This is where we are caught between 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. We are basically, is the glass full, is the glass half full, half empty, half full. The fact of the matter is that with that population base for which we have tested, one cannot justifiably say that we need to reopen. But given the clamor that is being from the national perspective with regards to businesses, what they say from a business perspective, yes, there probably need to be a phased opening. Yes, probably need to be a strategic planned, coordinated opening. If that is being done, then after we probably may be able to satisfy the business population. However, I want to just add this to this discussion. Assuming that we have tested the entire population of 1.3 million people, and I'm just assuming here because they were using the travel history as the criteria. But obviously 1.3 million people haven't traveled, but let me just assume that just to bring the point across. 1.3 million people tested, and a PCR kit, which is the gold standard kit of the World Health Organization, at let's say $65, $50 per kit, would have given us a cost of $84.5 million. Testing 1.3 million people, the cost would have been $84.5 million. Let's say the test, the treatment, and the tracing subsequently would have cost $1 billion. The total cost would have been $1.9 billion. This government have actually drawn down, or is about to draw down, $1.6 billion US dollars, which translates to about 10.9 billion TT dollars. They have also gotten from the Latin American Bank, they've gotten 400 million US dollars donation, and they've gotten a loan facility or grant of 450 million. And the American government has already given us, in fact, given us $475,000. That translates to about $15 billion. I want to ask this population, have this $15 billion been accounted for? Where is the transparency? Where is the accountability? Where is the governance with regards to this? And if I may say, using the same data that Oxford has used and using the same data that the government is imposing upon the population right now, that data tells me that this thing has been poorly managed in terms of the economic activity of this country. Had this government locked down this country we have had notice of this since November, December. Had this country been locked down since, let's say, January 15th to the January 30th, had we banned Carnival, had we cancelled Carnival, there would have been no need for this lockdown. We would have tested the 30,000.
But if you would allow me to come in, Mr. Suraj, and we'll get to Mr. Chattergoon in a moment, because I know he wants to develop that particular point he wanted to highlight, which we'll get to. Are you being fair? Because nobody was locking down anywhere January 15th, and we were a long distance away from COVID-19. If we really check it, the time this really became an issue was during the month of January. There was no major issue in any part of Western Europe. Italy wasn't looking at this situation as an issue at all. So would it not have been irresponsible for the government to lock down Trinidad and Tobago as early as January when no one else was doing that?
Well, okay. Let's say that we didn't do it in January then. Let's say we had done it in February. And let's say we had banned the carnival or canceled the carnival. There would have been no travel history associated with the process. The process has been testing.
But Mr. Suraj, if you allow me again, in fairness, again, we have to go with what the government is saying. If they're lying, we go find out eventually. But they have said, the CMO has said, the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Roshan Parasram, he said there is no evidence to suggest that any of our COVID positive testing people are a result of carnival. So the carnival issue, at least based on the official word from the government, is an irrelevant issue.
Yeah, but had you tested the people who had, you remember the 20, 30,000 people came down here for carnival, they would have been in contact and they would have been in community contact with the rest of the population. Let's say half of the population gets involved in carnival. We could have tested half of the population. Instead of the 1.3, we could have tested a half. And the half of the population would have given us probably, let's say, 45,000, assuming that we would have had 45,000 cases. The point I want to make with you actually is the quantity, the quantum of money that has been expended and whether we have derived the benefit for it. This country has been shut down. On May 15th would make it 47 days that this country would literally been shut down. Business activity would have been negligible. The business community is crying out. The working population is crying out. The schools are closed. Check the cost to this country in terms of closing down this country for 47 days when we could have done this for 50 days. Even when the World Bank, even when the World Health Organization declared this a pandemic on I think it was March 11th or 12th, had we even shut down at that point in time, and we had tested the people who had co-mingled with the visitors from Carnival, assuming that the Carnival was here as well, we would not have been in the position that we are right now. And okay. I am proposing to you that this has been poorly managed from an economic standpoint in terms of the cost to this country.
Okay, let me bring Mr. Chattergoon back into the discussion. I wanted to ask you a question, Mr. Chattergoon, but let me, because I know time is an issue, I know you wanted to develop a particular point in relation to this entire issue. Please go ahead and then I'll pose my question.
All right. The rush to open for the business community, the rush to get back people out to work, right? One must understand where we come from. The business community is crying for mercy. We're crying blood. And these are a simple reason why. It's not only about making money. It's certainly more than that. It's about employees having food on the table. It's about the business community could provide for the 60% of our population. Early in the game, the banks came as our savior. They said, we will defer payments up to 6 months. And I want to touch on that because I think that whole propaganda, that whole sense of comfort, people think different of what it is. So let's talk about the deferral. The deferral says, in common sense term, is that if you're owing for the 6 months, no mortgages, and if your installments should finish on January, it's now finished on June. That is the furthest from the truth. So let's start off with, one, it was on a case-by-case situation. Everybody would have had to reach out to their bank and they get advised accordingly. Some people say that, Mr. Chattergoon, we didn't get anything, is there anything you can do for us? And we are working with them. But I want to use my personal experience here. So I applied, I asked for 3 months, and what had happened is simply that process during the term of the entire loan costed me $200,000 in interest as a result of I am asking for a 3 months extension.
So just pause for a moment, Mr. Chattergoon, just so we could understand you clearly, because I recall when it was first announced, Mariano Brown, the economist, said that really it's a deferral, yes, and it will mean for the banks they wouldn't collect cash for the 3 months, but you are actually, as the customer, paying more in terms of compound interest. Is that exactly what you're saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
To the tune of
So
$200,000 in your case?
In my case, over the term of the loan, right? And understand this is that prior to COVID-19, if our sales were $10 coming out from COVID-19, it will be somewhere in the vicinity of $4 and $5. The icing on the cake is even our monthly mortgages after this 3 months actually goes up by between $7,000 to $9,000 per month during the term of the loan. So one must understand our mortgages are due, our electricity bills are due, water is due, flow, internet, telephone, all of these things are recurring expenses. The longer that it takes there, is harder it is for we to get out of the hole. Likewise, with the normal household, if they are not working, right, they have no income, all of these bills are due. Their rent, their electricity, phone, and so on. So this could very well, I'm just trying for the population to understand why the longer that we take, is harder it is to start the economy wheels. And with that being said, we cannot put the population at risk by saying, well, okay, because this is the situation, open back, and then we end up in a worse crisis.
All right. Well, let me go back to Mr. Surad, because Mr. Surad, I know you're raising a point that talked about accountability and the spending of the government. We understand that, but we just have a few minutes left. What is your position? Should businesses be allowed, the non-essential ones, to open, and if so, why?
Well, like I said, based on the government data, and as has been exemplified by the Oxford University description of us, there's no reason why we shouldn't reopen. Given the government data as is, we could probably reopen on a strategic and a phased, a planned basis, something that is well coordinated, gradual basis, simply because of the fact, again, like Reval would have said, if we decide to open tomorrow, chances are we doesn't know who out there, because of the limited testing or the inadequacy of the testing. We don't know who out there, the asymptomatic and the symptomatic people. We don't know who out there is taking these things. And we could end up with a second wave, a third wave. And assuming that should happen, that would create more catastrophe. So are we to open from a business perspective, even from the working population perspective, there is a clamor out there for a gradual reopening process. Whether that should be done is another issue. Personally, if I may say, I do not think so, because I think we need testing, tracing, and treatment for those who are confirmed cases. When that's been done, and once we have an adequate sample of the population, then after we can say, okay, we can open up the economy.
All right. Well, let me get to Mr. Chattergoon on that. Can you, Mr. Chattergoon, stay closed for beyond May the 4th, May the 15th, and so on, in the interest of public health and safety?
Well, as I do if you die, do if you don't. Financially, we'll find a way, right? But the realistic part of it is that if the COVID is out there, our safety and our safety for our staff, our loved ones, our customers are paramount importance. And the only way we can make that decision is by ramping up drastically our testing position. You know, ideally we would not have liked to close from day one, but this is certainly more important for the health, the well-being of Trinidad and Tobago to close up until this point. I'm eagerly anticipating come May 10th in terms of where our numbers are in testing and what happens, because for all you know, as they started to do, I believe from yesterday, I think about 50 or 80 more tests per day throughout Trinidad. If we continue along that 100 test part line, and they're not getting any community spread or positive results, then we are a little more comforted. But if you see now within the next couple of days that you're going to get a one here, one there, it sends a signal that, hey, we need to do more testing before we go back out there.
Mr. Chattergoon, Mr. Suraj, thanks very much for taking the time to be with us this morning to offer your perspectives. Very important to get these perspectives, whether we agree or we disagree, different points of view. And indeed, I think it was very telling to get the point of view from Mr. Chattergoon in relation to the bank deferrals of those loans and mortgages and so on. Yes, it removes the immediacy of it, but it's tacked on at the end, to the tune of $200,000 in the case of Mr. Chattergoon, Reval Chattergoon, the head of the Arima Business Association. 6:42 in Trinidad and Tobago. We'll be back after this.